Good evening and welcome to our second annual members meeting. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us tonight so that we can get to know each other a little more. It's hard these days with doing things on Zoom and not having in-person events, but we keep talking about trying to do that. And so hopefully one of these days we'll be able to do that more. But tonight we have several members of the board of the American Tayart Association with us. They will be facilitating the small groups when we gather. And they are Andrew Del Rossi, Matt Landry, Angel Mano, Richard Jordan, Ernie Tomingo, Laurie Elo, and I think that I hope I didn't forget anybody. Anyway, they will, and Kathleen Dignan. And so they will, and Richard Jordan, they will be facilitating the small groups. And before we go into our small groups, we have a panel of American Tayart Association members who will describe some of the ways they have been active in the association over these last few years. If you have been joining our reading circles and other events, you might know them already. We had invited Margaret Gagliardi, but unfortunately she had a fall and was not able to be with us. But the other four are Jason Willis, Joan McManus, Susan Maffey, and Betty Lucy. So after listening to their experiences, we'll move into the breakout rooms to continue the discussion with an emphasis on a question something like, how does Tayart motivate me to become more active in spreading his profound message? And we'll ask you while you're there, if you want to, share a comment or a question, to please write that in the chat, because when we return to the main room, Andrew Del Rossi will be facilitating the discussion that we have in the main room, and he will be using the questions. He'll be reading the questions and sharing your comments. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our treasurer, the treasurer of the American Tayart Association, Paula Granaccia. Paula will introduce our panelists, and after listening to their comments, Paula will lead us into the breakout rooms. So Paula.
Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to have you here. I'm so happy that we've initiated these member meetings so that we can spend some time together and get to know each other. And we are really fortunate tonight that 4 of our members have, agreed to share their journey and to be brave to do that, which is really wonderful. And so our process is that I'm going to introduce each of them. They're going to take about 5 minutes. And then when we're done, we'll move into our breakout groups. So we can get started. And our first member to speak is going to be Jason. Hi, Jason. Jason Willett has been a member of ATA for about 12 years, but has really increased his participation in the last 2 years. I can attest to that. It's great. He's been in book groups and some of our discussion groups. And he's going to share how he did it. Many of us got to know him at the Mass on the World that took place in October in New York. And it was just a delight to get to know him. And Jason also expects to earn his master's in theology sometime later this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason now.
Good evening, everyone. I apologize. I was traveling today, so I hope that the sound is not in any way distracting. If there's any sound around me, it should be pretty well cut out, but just let me know if that occurs. So I first heard of Tayart reading Ken Wilber's A Brief History of Everything. I'd been put on a mobilization order to go to Iraq. I was 22, and I didn't really think that we belonged in Iraq. And so I kind of felt like I needed to figure out what this whole meaning of life thing was all about. And I figured that Ken Wilber's book would be a good start. And it really was. It was a wonderful way that kind of framed everything from then on. So I first came across Teilhard's name there, but then it also, his name popped up in another book and then another book. So all in all, about 10%, I would say, of the books that I've read trying to determine sort of the deeper purpose behind life, about 10% of what I've just stumbled upon had his name. And so I went overseas again for a second tour in Afghanistan. I had read The Divine Milieu prior to that, and then I got medically evacuated for non-combat related issue and joined a book club outside of Fort Riley on the college campus there. And I believe it was probably that fall, we were reading the Emergent Christ. And it was about that same time that I stumbled upon, I don't even remember how I necessarily learned that there's an association. I was so excited, I was like, cool, there's a bunch of nerds out there like me. This is awesome. But in living in Kansas, it was really a challenge to feel like I could be a part of the association. It was one of those where I devoured Teilhard perspective. I enjoyed Teilhard studies. The first one I got was Jack Hott's Anticipatory Vision in the fall of 2012, I believe it was. And it just really floored me. In fact, I determined then that I actually wanted to go and pursue a degree in theology. So I came back from Afghanistan, and that's when I read The Human Phenomenon and The Future of Man. And both of those, again, just solidified for me exactly kind of what I wanted to do. I suppose, thankfully, because of COVID, last year about this time, I had received a check, a credit card that I had cleared out years ago, sent me a check saying, hey, we overcharged you interest to the tune of about $480. At that same time, a friend of mine who had been working for LinkedIn for a number of years was teaching an Unlocking LinkedIn course that had the same price as this check that just showed up randomly. So I was like, okay, cool, I guess I'll take this course. And it really helped me understand what the social media algorithm is looking for in how we advertise topics. About that same time, I noticed that the Institute for Religion and Science book club had gone online. I don't know if I just finally went to the ATA events page and noticed that we had kind of transitioned into this Zoom format. And I was really excited and just jumped on and enjoyed that book club. And then Andrew had led the discussion that Jack had last May with his newest book, and that was wonderful. About that time, I had an opportunity to kind of look at where else do I want to live? Where do I want to go? And so I said, Philadelphia would be a great region. It seems like Philadelphia, New York is where all of you tended to congregate. And so I thought, I'll get out of the Midwest and go and do that. And yeah, so as soon as I came in, it hit the ground running. I feel like all of us, in a way, owe it to Teilhard to make his message accessible to today's world. And unfortunately, that's going to need some sort of outside of the box thinking, perhaps. But I think we're doing it. I mean, it's wonderful to see the evolution of the news sphere here and globally able to connect in formats like this. So I hope that's clear enough and adequate. But that's the problem of going first.
Oh, thank you, Jason. More than adequate. Been so delightful to get to know you. Our next speaker is going to be Betty Lucy, who I've known for a while, even before ATA. Betty is an organic chemist. She retired from UCLA as a senior lecturer, and now she lives in a mountain village. She's a published author, a poet, a musician, and an ordained minister of natural theology. Betty has an inquisitive heart that has sought to integrate science and spirit throughout her life. Teilhard's life and writings have moved her to learn an evolving process from him that begins with observations of the mind as one portal into the deepest realms of the heart spirit, in order to experience revelations from the source, which can then be manifest through personal creative forms, such as poetry and other art and action. So Betty.
Thank you, Paula. And I'm getting some feedback. Okay. Let's see. Let's see if that continues or not. No. Okay. And wow. I'm going to take a little different approach. I want to first read a poem that I've written and then use the time after that to talk about Teilhard and make some comments about that. So I'm just going to do this straight and let you get whatever comes to you. And the title of it is I Am Energy. I am energy in the form of human matter, localized in space as a body of molecules, moving in toward the within, moving out toward the without. My template is a code, dead on its own, brought to life by fragments of energy flowing in response to the attractions of communion and the repulsions of isolation. Oneness is camouflaged by energies of differentiation of languages, sensations, and desires, while an edgeless divine longing strives to redirect them all as the wholeness that was becomes a wholeness rearranged for expanding experience of reconfigured consciousness. Temporal life employs self-identity to serve its material needs. Through humble diminishment, self steps aside into the abyss, freeing the source of radiance of truth, goodness, and beauty to imbue their omnipresent gifts to the cosmic singularity towards eternal life. I am energy, localized as a human, designed to redesign access to creativity, eager for human diversity to display curiosity, discover novel pathways to ultimate loving intimacy of energies within all existence. I am not here to judge value in any offering, but to discern beauty in its expression, to serve as a midwife to newborn consciousness of participants in the whole. I am here in this moment to give voice to processes of the energy I am. And I was going to keep an eye on my time, so Paula, you may need to give me a little buzz or something when I'm getting close to my 5 minutes. Let me say that I first was introduced to Teilhard when I was in my 20s, early 20s. So 60 years ago, you do the math. When I first read it, I was about a devout Catholic, knew all the rules I was supposed to do. And so it disturbed me. I couldn't really didn't know what was going on. So I put it aside. But in those 60 years to this day now, I've read a lot of different people's works in philosophy and psychology and spirituality. My real love professionally was organic chemistry, as Paula said. And because of that, that was about the structure of matter, and it had energy as part of the whole understanding of how life works with the organic molecules. And I was fortunate to be in a very dynamic time during my teaching when lots of things were being discovered and so forth. So it was very exciting to make those connections because I already had this desire to end what I considered a separation between science and spirit. Um, and so I didn't really come back to Teilhard until I learned about the ATA and I joined Sam and Paula's group. So I haven't been in the group in all of this very long, but I will say I am amazed because the group's being run beautifully, and the love and understanding that's coming through has accelerated where I am now. For me to be able to say today, and I say this with a warm heart, so don't let my reaction disturb you. After all these years of working on separation of these two, it finally dawned on me, there is no separation. And I'm giving credit to our discussions and the readings I've done with Teilhard. I think I share this whole science spirit thing that he went through. And as I read him and I started trying to, Paula, were you giving me a signal? No, okay.
But not now.
I'm very nervous about staying with him my 5 minutes. Not nervous, but I want to do that. But anyway, as I've worked, I've found that one of the best ways for me personally to go inward and embody is to sort of play the role of that Teilhard, when you read his work, kind of be him and go in and see what happens with me. And so I've had some amazing experiences in this short time that I've been, and I feel like I'm just so excited, not excited, I'm at peace. And I think that in the times that we're in, this is something, this division that I lived with, even though those categories may not be the ones that we need right now, but bringing together, I really believe that we need to go into that deep place that Teilhard was able to go to and bring that message to people in a way that they can understand healing and that we're all energy. That's maybe a little the wrong word for the normal public, but we're all in this together. And I do believe we are, that this is really wonderful. And I think, Paula, that's probably my 5 minutes, isn't it?
That was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. You can see why Betty's such a great part of our discussion group.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to now speak with Joan McManus. Hi, Joan.
Hey, hi everyone.
Yeah. So Joan began discovering Teilhard through some resources offered by the Thomas Berry Foundation. And after hearing Teilhard's name mentioned again and again, as many of us have, she began doing her own research through reading and YouTube presentations. And then she finally joined Sister Kathy's book club. So over the course of time, she's grown in her desire to share this newfound framework of her Christian faith with friends and now with us. And she was also at the Mass on the World in New York. So thank you, Joan.
Hi everyone. Yeah, just a little background on me. I am a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. I am a teacher to students of other languages. I'm an ESL teacher. I come from a Mennonite background, and I consider myself as a lifelong learner. And I too have always found a desire to bridge science and faith together. I also took on with my family a more traditional role as missionary in Indonesia for 13 years. So yeah, through Thomas Berry and then learning of Ursula King and reading the biography Spirit of Fire about Teilhard, and then thankfully joining Sister Kathy through the book clubs offered by Chestnut Hill, and especially the book that we did written by John Hott, The Cosmic Vision of Teilhard, just really spurred me on in new thoughts and a framework for my faith. And along the way, I slowly introduced my thoughts to family, friends, and colleagues. I suggested to them the books and articles that I was reading. And I've had the opportunity to start 3 book clubs, most of them centered around the John Hott book. And I've been invited to do a podcast for an evangelical mission organization about Teilhard. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And yeah, those people are slowly, coming to peace, as you were saying, Betty, as well, and sharing it with influential people in their life. So it's really interesting to see it catch fire, so to speak. And just in asking them what they found intriguing and compelling about Teilhard, I thought it would be interesting to share that with you. It's just the integrity of acknowledging science and evolution in our faith, and including the cosmos and deep time in relation to our faith and our interior lives being intertwined with the story of the universe. Also, they've been very excited about just the hope of renewal and being able to see fresh, novel expressions of faith, God as Omega, and just the powerful infusion of the divine in all things through the incarnation of Jesus. And the meaning of all acts of contribution, whether they be the smallest or most obscure, as being very meaningful. And so with the creativity of the future applications towards this increased consciousness, I myself was very intrigued with creation, nature. Where have we yet to go that we haven't gone? And most recently, interested in embodiment, our body's knowledge that we haven't really tapped into yet, and feeling that this might be part of the increased consciousness that Teilhard was talking about. So just walking through doors and opening windows and inviting people along in the journey with me. And I'll just leave you with this latest intrigue of mine that I came across by 2 Jesuit priests, Peter Campbell and Ed McMahon, who interacted with Jean Gemlin and Carl Rogers from the University of Chicago, and came up with a biospiritual focusing to tap into our body's knowing, and a kind of like a Ignatius practical practice. And they especially were spurred on by the teachings of Teilhard and felt that his inklings toward human energetics could lead us further down the road. They started the organization in the 70s, but it's really moving forward. And so I just want to encourage people, keep opening the windows, keep walking through the doors, and invite others along with you in the journey. It's been quite delightful. And thanks especially to the hospitality that Sister Kathy has offered to me, inviting me warmly into this community. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joan. It's wonderful to meet a kindred spirit. We haven't known each other, but we're going to, I know. So our final speaker is Susan Maffei. Susan? There you are. Hi, Susan. Susan recently retired, but she still works occasionally as a radiation oncologist. She found Teilhard in her late teens, as many of us did. And she's become a member of ATA in May of 2023. And she was also fortunate to be with us at the celebration of the Mass on the World in October. And at her church, she's led a discussion group on Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si, emphasizing Teilhard's cosmic view. So thank you so much, Susan. She's part of our discussion group as well that's been going on for a while now.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. I wrote up my notes, so pardon me if I'm not looking directly at you. So I'm honored to be here and asked to share with you briefly how I experienced my participation in the ATA. First, again, I'll just say that I found and read Teilhard in my late teens, early 20s. And then I did not pick him up again until the last few years, as I was part-time in my career and then retired. I'm in the field of medicine, specifically the specialty of radiation oncology. I give this history only because my early reading, especially Building the Earth, allowed me to apprehend my science education through my understanding of Teilhard's view of the structure of the universe. Now, scientific knowledge is what it is, but what Teilhard did for me was to allow me to sit back once in a while and smile at what I see as God's or the original love's sense of humor in drawing us forward in the evolution of greater and greater understanding and use of what turns out to be the unimaginable complexity of our world and the universe, all built on love. So fast forward to my exposure to the ATA, which really comes through Kathleen Degnan, as she introduced me to the ATA at the Thomas Berry Contemplative Ecology Group at Iona University. And I joined last May. So I went to the conference in New York, and for the first time in my life, I was among other people who knew and valued him as much as and more than I. It was exhilarating and humbling because there is so much to know. I found everyone to be welcoming. By this winter, I was able to join the Zoom groups studying Teilhard, and I am constantly amazed by the breadth of different people's apprehension of his words and message for use for themselves and in today's world. And I think this speaks to the extraordinary depth of Teilhard's thought, that he can appeal to so many people on so many different levels, all with value. One of the things that I am learning is that I do not have the language that many people have to discuss Teilhard, but I still find a welcoming engagement in the groups. This is challenging me to keep growing in the study of Teilhard. And along the way, I expect to find a space for myself to express my own understanding and use of his thoughts. I see many possibilities. So tonight I look forward to talking more with all of you in the small groups about your journeys in Teilhard's thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan, Jason, and Betty, and Joan. It's great to hear you. So now we're going to move into our breakout groups. And, you know, we have a chance for us each, we each have a story about Teilhard, or else we wouldn't be here. You know, how has Teilhard inspired you? That's the question for the breakout groups. And so when you listen to your fellow members, is there anything that enlivens in you? Some of your members are active participants in ATA, and you know, we can always use your creativity and energy, and love to have you be with us more often. So these are all things that, you know, you can share together. And I think, Kathy, we're going to have about 20-25 minutes
That's right.
together. So there'll be a nice opportunity for everyone to speak if you choose. So I think now we're going to move into the, is there anything else, Kathy, we need to say about that? Oh, the chat. You can put questions in the chat as they come up to you, either in your breakout groups or later when the whole group comes together. Okay.
All right, everyone. It was great to be in the small group. I had a small group of 4 people, including myself. It was wonderful to spend that intimate time together, to hear a little bit about people's stories, and to hear their interest in Teilhard, and to kind of see some ways they might plug in. So at this point, I would like to open it up to, I don't know if the group leaders maybe would want to, you know, have anything to share. Otherwise, if anyone, any member, any friend of the ATA has anything that they would like to share, or any question they would like to ask, now the floor is yours. And I would be happy to start if, you know, we need an icebreaker. Like I said, it was a very inspiring group. You know, 4 people with very different backgrounds, but very unique focuses when it comes to or unique paths, what led them to Teilhard, and then a unique focus in terms of how they're really trying to take that forward. And everything from the areas of scholarship to spiritual direction to socio-political application to being able to talk with their family. It was a very, enlightening conversation just to see the different places people come from and where they are trying to go with this inspiration they have from Teilhard. So I'm curious if anyone else might want to drop a question in the chat, or if you would want to raise your hand, I would be happy to start to facilitate those questions.
I raised my hand. Jim Craig.
Jim, I don't see it, but please go ahead. Please share.
Well, there's 2 pages of people, little rectangles. So I just wanted to express my gratitude to those people like Catherine Duffy and others that have been in the organization for a while for keeping it going and organizing things such as this. I've been a member for a while, a Teilhard fan for a long while, but I have not been active in the organization. I'm really grateful to people that have. That's it for me.
Thank you, Jim.
Mm.
Trying to look at some of the questions and comments in the chat here. There is a question for the Frosts. I saw Frank and Mary on here. Could you, where did it go? When can we view your film?
It's a lot easier to say it verbally than to try to type the answer to the question. So thank you. The film will get a broadcast premiere at Maryland Public Television in May, immediately followed by national streaming on a PBS app. So all of you will be able to access that show, 2-hour program, biography of Teilhard, by PBS app starting, and we'll be getting, ATA will get the word out to you in detail when we have, they don't fix at Maryland Public Television, they don't fix the exact programming dates until two months out. So we won't know until at least the middle of March what the exact date is, but it'll be in May.
Thank you, Frank.
Mhm.
Very good news.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Frank and Mary Frost, they are husband and wife and filmmakers and members of the ATA, and they have shared their journey with Teilhard now on the big screen in terms of making a documentary that you'll be able to view, like Frank just said, through those channels. We do have an event coming up. I believe the date is March 20th. I don't have it in front of me, but they will be hosting a program where they'll talk about the making of the film. So please do check out the website for more information on that. Just trying to look through some of these questions in the comments here. But if anyone else would like to jump in publicly and say something, I see Paula or Sam's hand going up there.
Okay. Are we off mute?
Yes.
Okay. A question was asked or a statement was made in our small group by Suzanne. And that is, and it's a question we've gotten a lot in not just Teilhard conversations, but in others. And that is, what do we do? What do we do to bring about to move civilization, to move humanity in the direction of becoming, as Thomas Berry would say, a mutually enhancing presence within the whole Earth community? And I didn't get a chance to say this, but the the answer, there's no one answer, and I don't mean to oversimplify, but we're doing it. The conversation is the work. It's connecting. It's exchanging ideas, inspiring each other, learning from each other, recognizing that as humanity, we are a superorganism. We have a huge heart that encompasses the whole world and a huge mind. And I'm not trying to refer to anything, either internet-based or even the noosphere concept, but we truly are. And the exchange of ideas. A great scientist and complexity theorist, Stuart Kaufman, at the beginning of his book, Reinventing the Sacred, wrote in the frontispiece, "To the conversations we must have."
And here it is.
And so it is that it's the work that Jennifer's doing on the Deep Time Network, and Jeremy Lin on the Deep Transformation Network, and all of these conversations are. And so when someone asks you, "What do I do?" tell them, keep talking and keep listening.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay. And I see a bunch more hands up here. Let's go to Richard first.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and everyone. Well, yes, we also had 4 in our group: Catherine, Lance, and Peter. And the conversations were so wonderfully attractive of the enchantment that we find, I think, through Teilhard in this wonderful work on science, religion, and art. We really found that art had a great place in the lives of all of us. I think Peter also offered a very interesting idea, which we've discussed before, to have a sort of I would call it a clearinghouse of information, books and other resources on Teilhard, but perhaps also a book discussion group focused on art, and the art that many of the board members and members of the association also are producing. So wonderful group. I look forward, I hope, to some more discussions, and sooner than the next year. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Richard. And the next hand up here is Jason. We'll hear from Jason.
I'll be quick. I thought the group that I was in, it was myself. Sorry, we had one. If whoever was just a muted phone that was a part of our group, I apologize. We had called and no response. So we had, in the end, it was just Jim Craig and Patrick Moffat speaking, and it was wonderful. They both were discussing. We were trying to specify whether the noosphere was a human phenomenon itself, or if it was isolated itself to humans, or if it was life itself is the noosphere emerges out of life, and that humans are simply an expression of that is fairly evolved. And that we all had great discussion about that. The thing that was brought up though, that I thought was powerful, discussing refugee crises, the children, wars, displacement, the movement of humans throughout this planet. Jim had mentioned that he was in Denmark, and that there was a gentleman who was either a second or a third generation immigrant from China. And, visually he said, you look at me and what do you say? You say, Chinese, but I'm Denmark. I am a Dane. I've been a Dane all my life. My children are Danes, and so that really points to the future that we can look forward to, in which a lot of the traits that we have somewhat blend together so well that we don't have necessarily ethnic division. And that sort of led to the discussion about how much a Teilhardian cosmology or a cosmological time scale and trying to think in cosmic times can give you some peace. And that was the great takeaway I got really out of that, the discussion. And
Thank you, Jason. Our next we have Jennifer Morgan.
Thank you, Andrew. I had a wonderful conversation with John Coter and Marianne Koch. And I would say one of the themes that came out really strongly was the idea of how our spirituality, our contemplative spirituality has evolved over time. And as part of that evolution, that's what drew us to Teilhard. So it's very much inside of this trajectory. And I think that's such an important idea. And then the place of nature inside of our more recent spirituality. It was also interesting to look at the personal connections that John has with you, Frank, way back. And also with Kathy. So I think the personal interconnections are really, really important. And John talked a lot because John has written books, and he's also very interested in creating very short videos about Teilhard that are going to reach people in their 20s, like very short videos. And I think that's just a great idea.
Thank you. All right, next we're going to go to Suzanne Taylor.
Well, hi, everybody. I was late to the party and I all of a sudden, clicked in and I was in a discussion group, a breakout room. Well, what a pleasure that was to be talking to people who know what I'm talking about. But this is all I talk about. My commitment in the world is to teach the world the universe story. We look at how dangerous things are and how can we save ourselves? And to me, the most significant thing we could do would be change our creation story and get us out of being sinners and get us into being sacred creatures, because we would want to take care of the earth. Then we try to fix this and fix that. How about fixing how we think? Because if as we think, so we act. So I work with Brian Swin, by the way. He's my closest ally, and I'm interested in little videos about Teilhard because I have hired an animator to do some animation on the universe story, with Brian being the audio of it. And we're almost ready to be finished. We're sort of in the last stages of the first one. Little ones, we'll do a bunch of little ones, hopefully, to help teach this. It'll be a tool for people who understand this to be able to explain it to other people, which is not easy. But I'm doing whatever I can to make this happen. And you should all be on my mailing list. This is all I'm dealing with pretty much. Underneath everything is this. So I'm popping it into I put it in the chat before how to get on the mailing list. This time I'm sending you to one of the pieces that you can sign up from there, just so you get the flavor of what it is that, I'm doing. So I'll tell you just one more thing. Today's the last day for submissions to an essay contest that I've been writing about, to actually come up with ideas for what we can do. It's got a little premise that you're in 2050 and the world is working. Tell how it happened. So I'm a little over. The reason I was late, I've got like 100 entries and I've got to read them all and think about them all and make prizes for them. So I'm a little bit overwhelmed, but it's a good overwhelm. So anyway, do get on my mailing list. I guarantee you'll like it.
Thank you, Suzanne. Great spirit to your work there. And I just want to mention about my group too. Like I said earlier, there was some great discussion, but just to single out a couple people here. The first is Jason Willits, who spoke at the beginning. And something Jason didn't mention was how he's gotten involved directly with submitting pieces for Teilhard Perspective. He's written a piece about his own experience in the service and reflective on Teilhard's experience in that way in World War I. And then Susan, where are you? Susan Mayfie there. She, in our group, was kind of saying, like, she's a medical professional. She comes from that world, and she feels like in a world where you need to have the exact words to describe the situation and what's happening, she doesn't have the words now to describe her passion for Teilhard, the importance of his vision. But in talking with her family, right, she's trying to find those words. And I just thought that both of those were beautiful examples of just how naturally they are finding ways to share their experience of the importance of Teilhard with the world. Jason, like you said, contacted the organization. He and I had a number of conversations. we've kind of found this connecting point on his experience with the service and Teilhard's as a soldier, and boom, there was a natural, organic way for him to contribute. And I said, maybe to Susan, and maybe, if you want to think about writing something about your journey, sharing this important vision with your family, with the younger generations about faith and meaning and so much more, right? So that's also to say, as the editor of Teilhard Perspective, it's a plug for submissions. If there's something that, you really feel is, important enough for you to submit and tight enough to submit, please, send that to us and we'd be happy to look at it and work with you. So that's all to say. We're going to jump over now to Catherine and then Kathleen. So first we'll go to Catherine.
Okay, thank you. It's great to see Suzanne again. She and I seem to go in tandem to various Zoom meetings. It's great. But she has more energy and thinking that goes into her projects. She's amazing. So I really encourage you to follow her. She finds ideas. She's very creative, and she's moving a lot of people along, I think. But I raised my hand because I wanted to draw attention to a project that one of the people in my group, a breakout group, mentioned, which I think is really exciting. I love the idea, and I would like you all to know what her thinking is. And I'm going to ask Tess if she wants to talk about her project of having a meditation, a daily meditation online. So could you talk about it, Tess?
Oh, thank you, Catherine. Kathleen had asked how could the organization serve us in different ways beyond what they're already very generously and amazingly doing. And I had just suggested, someone else in our group said that they follow Richard Rohr, and I love the daily meditations that are sent out from the CAC. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if it were possible, and I know it would be a lot of work, for the ATA to send out a daily quote from Teilhard, because I think probably many of us are busy and sometimes it's hard to dedicate time to get to the full book, but a daily meditation would be wonderful. So that was my thought, if it's possible.
Yeah,
thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. And I've also thought that the meditations could also be from associated people, Thomas Berry, Brian Swim. There are a slew of people, John Grimm, and on and on. There's a lot of resources available to us.
Yeah, so that's awesome. And when you have ideas like that, if it's something that you'd like to formally present to us, please, do that. And we'll say this as someone that works in ministry, and you get told often a lot, what you should do, Andrew. The asterisk in that, and what can really help the organization, is if the person that presents the good idea is also willing to be a part of it too in some way. So you're not just the good idea fairy, but you're willing to rub to the road in such a way and be a part of the effort. So, I mean, like I said, we are open to the different offerings that, people might have. We want to amplify the message of Teilhard. We want to amplify his vision. So, if you have something you'd like to share with us that we can help you with and work with you on, then by all means, please reach out. Oh, Kathleen, I'm sorry. You're muted, Kathleen.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Catherine, for inviting Tess to offer her wonderful suggestion, which is quite doable. And I hope that as an association, we do think about that. I don't think it would be impossible to do. Tess was even suggesting that we could use selections from the Teilhard Book of Hours, which in a sense has the meditations readily prepared. So I was in a wonderful group of which Catherine and Tess were two members, along with Virginia Day and Maria Julia Rougier from Vancouver. We had folks from California, Catherine and Julia from Vancouver, and Tess from Connecticut, And I think I'm forgetting someone, am I? Maybe me. Well, anyway, what I thought was very interesting that came to the fore in our group was the numbers of times people mentioned Ignatian spirituality and Teilhard. And I think that's another very fruitful field for us to explore more as an association. Tess is involved in this work at Yale. I think Virginia Day is involved in this work as well. And certainly there are others. But one of the things that we were saying is that you come to understand something perhaps not immediately underscored about Teilhard when you understand how powerfully formed he is in the Ignatian charism and by the exercises. And I think that since there is such a real movement, there's an Ignatian movement resurging all over the place, that I think it would be a wonderful thing for us to do a Teilhardian highlight on the Ignatian spiritual gift to spiritual seekers. Let me just see now if there was anything else. Am I forgetting anything, friends?
Kathleen, I wonder if I can have just 1 minute of your time.
Sure.
Because there's a book, you might be saying it backwards, but it's called The Spiritual Exercises with Teilhard de Chardin. It's recently published by Paulus Press. It's written by Agustin Udias, originally in Spanish. But the value of this is Udias went back to the journals where Teilhard looks at the exercises, talks about the exercises, and says what needs to be changed because of the cosmology. So anybody who does the exercises, uses this, I think this would be a wonderful book to work with. We already have Lou Savory's book, but I think there's something in here that, is also very valuable. So thank you, Kathleen, for letting me.
No, that's great. Maybe that will be a big kind of offering that we would make in a very rich way. So thank you to my friends that I will.
Thank you, Kathleen. Now we have Frank and Mary Frost.
We might do this in tandem. We haven't talked about that exactly. I start off by saying that I really relate to Suzanne's little quick presentation because we feel overwhelmed at the moment getting to the finish line of our show, and we contemplated not showing up tonight. But I'm glad we did because it's been a very rich experience. And I want to say hello to John Kotri. Hi, John. And I'm going to tell you that I've gotten a preview of John's videos, and they are excellent. So you'll be loving those. We had a great conversation with Mike Sala, Bonnie Worth, Mary Claire Maggio, and ourselves. And I was very favorably impressed at the beginning of this evening with the presentations. All came from a scientific perspective, it seemed. And I'm really glad about that. In my experience of the discussions of Teilhard, generally speaking, it's generally about spirituality and not much about science. And we live in a scientific world, and the great need, as I see it, is that people who don't have time for religion, is often largely because they have to roll their eyes when they hear about the religious expression in the context of science. And Teilhard is an antidote to that. But interestingly enough, in our group, we got little of that. Mike Sala, who's a chaplain, does encounter science, but he also acts in a world of science because he's in hospital and he's dealing with, as he described it, I think, broken people. Maybe that's not the right word, Mike, but he emphasized that what Teilhard brings to him about the healing is that is a relation, is that the world is relational. It's relationships. It's the love that binds the world and binds the healing. And that's another dimension of Teilhard. Somebody else early on mentioned the great diversity of ways that people relate to Teilhard. And Mary and I, in doing our show, encounter that constantly, that there's so many different ways that Teilhard touches people. It's difficult for us in a sense because we don't have one audience. We have a whole array of audiences for people who care about different things. And we need to try to attach the story that we're telling to them. I also want to tell you that we don't deal a whole lot. As I told the group last night, we did a preview screening too. This film is not an exegesis of philosophy or theology. It's a story about a human being. And it's on that basis that we think we can reach a very general, very wide audience, expand the pie shape of the population that would be attracted to Teilhard because he's an interesting individual. And somebody in our group that would have been, I think Bonnie probably said that she was reading your book on the struggles of Teilhard, Kathy, and you'll find that the story that we tell is about the struggles of Teilhard. That's part of where the great human appeal is. And once you relate to this man as a human being and his life and his struggles, you may be inclined to pursue all the other kinds of things that we've been talking about tonight, and we find people talking about and wanting to talk about in Teilhard. And so we will send them to the ATA to be further educated. So then that's, and you want to add to that?
No, I think that's good.
You want me to shut up? Okay.
Thank you, Frank. And the two of you did such a phenomenal job with your team to really, do Teilhard's story justice so well. So overdue too, that, it's done in a modern fashion where audiences can really appreciate it, especially the younger people. So thank you for that. And we all look forward to its premiere. Next, we do have just a few minutes left here to reverence everyone's time. We're coming up on 8:30, but we'll take our last two hands from Laura and then Paula and Sam.
Okay, I was in a group with Robert and Gail and Claire and Dave. So it sounds like we were a big group compared to some of them. Many of the themes that other groups have talked about, also came up in our group. The entanglement or the interrelatedness of things, came up multiple times. But one of the things I noticed, like as I sort of compiled the information from the various people, and I don't know if this implies anything about our desire to draw in more young people to the ATA, but the people in our group that that encountered Teilhard when they were young, then kind of went and did other things and had like a big chunk of time in the middle of their life when they were not engaged with Teilhard's work, and then came back to it later in life. And the couple of us that encountered Teilhard, say midlife, we were the ones that sort of, once we found Teilhard, we never let go. So I don't know if that tells us anything about how we might approach drawing in young people and attracting young people, but it's just an observation that I've got from our group. We did have 5 people, and so we only got to the first half of what we were supposed to do, which was how we all met Teilhard. We did, Frank, you would have liked our group. We had lots of scientists in our group. We have we had two math people and a chemist and somebody who did the whole connecting science with lay people. And so anyway, we didn't get to the thing about what do we do going forward, because we just ran out of time with telling our stories, but that's it.
Thank you, Laura. And Sam and Paula.
Yeah, I just really briefly, I wanted to say that, just give a shout out to the power of Zoom. So we had Marianne from Adelaide, Australia, and we had Suzanne from LA and Laura from Princeton, and Sam and I are up in Maine, and we would never have been able to come together like this. So what a gift. However, it is wonderful to also be in person. Many of us were in New York, and there's another opportunity coming up the weekend of the annual meeting with the John Philip Newell presentation. So keep your eye on that if you're able to come, or you can Zoom in too. We don't want you not to Zoom. So anyway, it was a great group, lots of energy and amazing kindredship.
Thank you, Sam and Paula. And yes, we are going to definitely keep that energy going of an in-person event, or at least an option for such. And I think Sister Kathy is going to share a little bit more about that. But I'd like to thank everyone overall for your input, for being here tonight. For those of you who are members, thank you so much for your continued support of the organization. And if you are not a member and you're a friend of the organization, then by all means, please reach out. Sister Kathy has information for you, or you can also go on the website and click the membership tab on there. So I would like to personally thank my group members. I only mentioned a few of you by name, but they were Margaret Gordon, Susan Mayfie, and then Di Shearer. So it was a pleasure to be with all of you tonight and to get to know your stories about Teilhard. And thanks for asking about mine too. It's always nice to think back to how, you got into Teilhard, and it gives you almost like a push to keep going when you're feeling a little bit of a lull. So it's been a pleasure to be with you and all of your energy tonight. And now I turn it back to our president, Sister Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew. So I too have felt a lot of energy from the group, and I think some good ideas also. We'll have to see how we can implement them. In our group, one of the issues that came up that I think is critical, and others have said it too, is young people. How are we going to involve young people? So it's good, and we were glad to see we have a couple young people with us tonight. So before we leave, I want to remind you that if you're not on the mailing list of the Institute for Religion and Science, we do lectures and often Teilhard lectures. And so if you're interested in being on that mailing list, the website is there. The website for the American Teilhard Association is there. If you are not a member yet, you really should become a member, because, in numbers, there is strength. And if you need information, you can always email me. But I would also like to invite you to our upcoming events. I think you will enjoy them. On March 20th, Frank and Mary Frost, we've already talked about this, will be doing a program called Minor Miracles. They'll be sharing their 12-year adventure of making the film. So there's a lot of, the story behind it is exciting too. Now it turns out that this is not the correct title. The new title is Teilhard, Visionary Scientist. And as Frank was telling us, it should be available soon, and we'll surely send you information. The other event that we hope you join us, it should be very exciting and very useful. This year, John Philip Newell will be leading the ATA annual event. The event will be on Zoom from 12 to 2 on June 1st. And Newell, if you don't know him, he's well known, but he is a master of Celtic spirituality, and he'll be highlighting its principles in the work of Teilhard de Chardin. So that should be very interesting to see how the two connect. Now, this is an interesting event and an experiment we're doing. There's an opportunity to join us in person at Dalesford Abbey. So from May 31st to June 2nd at Dalesford Abbey in Paoli, Pennsylvania, we'll be joining together to listen to the lecture, and the program. It'll be more than a lecture. But we will have time to reflect on the material, to share some other, so a chapter from his book, conversation about things, some prayer about it. And so it should be very interesting and a great way to get to know one another. We had a wonderful time in New York in October with the French Association. We got to know so many people, and several of the members here were there also. And I think it just makes a whole difference. So if you're able to join us, that would be wonderful. You'll find information on our website. And so then once again, I would want to thank you for your attention, for your good questions and your comments, and for your continual support of our efforts. And we hope to see you at our retreats, our reading circles, all the other events that we have. Be sure to, go to our website, see our podcasts, our blogs. And until the next time, Godspeed. Thank you.